Joining us now here on the John Fredericks Radio Network is the one and only Morgan Griffith, Congressman, 9th District, Republican, Southwest Virginia. Congressman Griffith, great to have you, sir.
Great to be with you. Hope you're doing well.
Well, you know, it's great to be with you. I was a little fired up earlier because I was really upset by the debate last night between Chris Wallace and President Trump, and Biden was kind of a bystander, as far as I'm concerned. But before we get into politics and the House and coronavirus package, what did you think of the debate last night?
Well, I think, and I only got to hear a little bit of it because I was on the floor doing some things there, but we were doing a nice send-off for John Shimkus, who's retiring, and he's a friend, and I was there. But, you know, I think your analysis this morning was spot on. I wasn't raised that way. We scold my kids when they call each other stupid. That's just not, unfortunately, that's just not the way I do things, and I do think the president got in the way of part of his message. I mean, look, he kept, in my opinion, he kept Joe Biden, and I think you said this earlier, he kept Joe Biden from being able to get into one of those long rants where he doesn't make any sense and he starts rambling off on something that nobody knows what he's talking about, because he kept all the interruptions. Some of them were necessary, but I think he probably went a little further than he needed to on that. I think, you know, the Telemundo poll that you just mentioned, that is very interesting because Democrats have all been about, you know, trying to separate groups into different groups and then go out and get their vote. They can't win if they don't get a significant, if they don't get a majority of the Hispanic vote, they don't win. And so they've got some real interest. I mean, it's going to be interesting as we go through the polls in the next week to see what was the lasting effect of the debate. But, you know, I don't think the president hurt himself with his base, but I think that he had an opportunity to let Joe Biden step all over his own message, and Joe didn't do great, but the president kept him from actually sounding like he had no idea what was going on in the world.
Spot on. I mean, that to me is the analysis of that debate. I think rudeness overtook it and overshadowed some of the more substantive things that we could have gotten out of it, so I'm just not in favor of it. Makes me crazy when it's not only done by both parties, it's condoned, and it was like part of the shtick, and it was just awful. So, but I agree with you. We're in total agreement. I think the president made an error in judgment in keeping cutting Biden off, because between Wallace protecting him and Trump cutting him off, you didn't have enough time for him to say. He would have eventually said stuff that would have made no sense. And he got a pass on that. That was the second thing. And obviously my thoughts on Chris Wallace, I'm not going to repeat those. I think he's a complete fraud, and it showed last night. The guy is a complete phony. He's a political operative, and he protected Biden. Entire strategy last night was to protect Biden. What do you think? Do you think Biden is going to go with any other debates, or do you think he's going to take the advice of the Democratic operatives and bail?
I don't know the answer to that one, and I'm not sure Biden knows the answer to that one either. I mean, it's hard not to do additional debates and be taken seriously. But if they feel like they've gotten all their votes in, which they're out there working hard to get, you know, everybody to mail in their ballots, if they feel like they've got all their votes in and they don't need any more votes, then he won't do debates. If they think they're behind in their targeting, they're going to be ahead in the early voting because so many Republicans are going to vote at the polls. But if they think they're behind in their targeting and what their numbers show, they'll do another debate because they have no choice.
Mm-hmm. So you think his next debate will be a function of where their voters are, what the turnout is with the absentee ballots. So you think it's going to be a completely tactical decision, Morgan? Is that what I've heard?
Absolutely. It's going to be a tactical decision. If they think they can win without doing the debates, they won't do them. If they think that their calculus is they have to have another at least neutral debate in order to win, then they'll do one.
Interesting. Okay, Morgan Griffith with us, Congressman, Republican, 9th District, Virginia. That's the Southwest Virginia area. He's up for re-election in 2020 in November 3rd, but he's going to get re-elected because he has no opposition. Somebody would have to beat him as a write-in, not going to happen. So he's going back to Congress. Yay. Let's talk about the coronavirus package number 2. Do we have a deal or not? Yesterday it seemed like we did. Pelosi saying $2.1 trillion and talking to the Treasury Secretary again. Where are we with this?
Well, what they've put out, is not going to get Republican votes in the House. I mean, I'm not going to say there won't be one or two, but they've just slapped something together. A lot of it has to do with politics. They're saving a little bit of money by partially defunding police programs in the bill. That's not something that I can agree with. The other thing is that, when we put out the CARES Act in the spring, back in March, we had to act quickly. We didn't have time to crunch numbers. And we came up with that $600 on top of your regular unemployment. What we saw in Southwest Virginia and Southside Virginia was that was a too large amount of money. You actually could make more money staying at home than you could by going to work, and that's a disincentive to work. And many employers want to keep good employees if they can, so they were like, okay, we won't turn you into the VEC. We'll just hopefully ride it out because it was not going to last that long. If we continue that, and this bill does that, that's going to hurt jobs and hurt the economy long term in Southwest Virginia because there are going to be a lot of businesses that can't get their employees back, and as a result of that, they can't stay open. Now, on the other side of that, and what should have been happening if there had been real negotiations instead of political posturing by Nancy Pelosi for the last 4 or 5 months, 6 months, what should have happened was we should have figured out a formula that would have been fair to all sections of the country. Because I get it. If you live in Los Angeles, that $600 added onto your regular unemployment probably isn't too much. If you live in New York City, that may not be too much. But again, it's Washington and not thinking outside the box. And Nancy Pelosi's just like one size fits all. Here's what we're going to do. And it's devastating to the economy in the rural areas of the country, including the area that I represent, to go that high. As you know, we talked earlier, I'd be happy to go with additional amounts somewhere between 2 and 4. I like 2 to 3, but $200 to $400 would have made sense in my section of the country. But $600 is devastating to businesses that are trying to get up and running again.
I think if you can get a package that can get another round of PPP, and I guess this checks, I'm not sure what they've done, but I know that some people are hurting and might need them. But you got to get another round of PPP. You got to tighten it up so that it really is for small businesses, and we're not getting the LA Lakers getting $100 million or whatever they got. I mean, that was just obscene.
Or Planned Parenthood.
Wall Street. Planned Parenthood, all that's got to go. I mean, it should be like you should have a number like 75 or 50. I mean, it should actually be for small companies to be able to start hiring their people back because the first round they got ran out. And then I agree with you 100% on the unemployment. I mean, it should be on a state-by-state basis. $600 in Southeast Tennessee is different than $600 in Los Angeles. So, I mean, it should be done on a prorated basis. But when do you think we'll have something?
Well, I'm not hopeful. As I've said many times on your show, Nancy Pelosi is all about politics. The only reason that she's put in, what she calls a skinny bill, which is twice as large as the Republican proposals, that's skinny to her. But the only reason she's put that in is a lot of her members were facing heat back home. She wants to give them a political vote. Once she does the political vote and she feels like she's covered on the political base for some of her people back home in their districts where they are getting flack about not having a new plan, she doesn't care. I really don't think she cares about American families and the working class people of the United States of America. And all she cares about is retaining the speaker's gavel and trying to help get Joe Biden elected. And if that means, allowing socialists to take over her party, so be it.
I think so. Look, it's all about power for Nancy Pelosi. On the John Fredericks Radio Network, we're with Congressman Morgan Griffith, Republican, 9th District, Virginia. That's Southwest Virginia. Huge area going from Roanoke all the way to the end of the state out by Tennessee. So that is a tremendous number of square miles he's got to cover. Congressman, let's get to Trump's tax documents. One of your colleagues is called in the House, has called for a probe of the source of the New York Times Trump tax documents. So a lot of us are looking at this and we say, okay, so when you send your taxes to the IRS, you expect that they're private, that there wouldn't be someone there that would get them out of a file box and send them to the New York Times. If there's anything the matter with them or not, it's your private tax returns. That's your privacy. How did this happen, and what will the probe be, and will it amount to anything?
Well, I think the first question is, did the New York Times report on a real tax return or on some speculation? I mean, I'm not even sure they actually got something. So there ought to be a probe to see whether any tax information was taken out of a box or out of a computer file and sent to the New York Times. Because you remember Harry Reid made the same allegations against Mitt Romney, turned out later not to be true, and Harry Reid just flippantly said, hey, worked, we won the election, didn't we? And he said it on the floor, so there was no recourse, because you're free to say whatever on the floor of either house. So the first question in the probe would be, was there actually real information that was passed on to the New York Times, or did they rely on something like, let's say, the Steele dossier that had no verification at all? New York Times would not be held to that standard. At least I don't hold them to a standard where they actually got real information. I don't doubt that somebody told them this was real information, but I doubt they checked into it deeply. This was a story they wanted to run. And in my opinion, the fact that ads for Biden came out immediately, look, you can do an ad pretty quick, but you can't do them that quick.
It was out. It was out within minutes. It was out within minutes.
You got a cooperation between the media and Biden. Not that I'm shocked by that, but I think the evidence is pretty clear. I've been in a lot of campaigns, and I did a TV ad one time. We turned it around in about 16, 17 hours. But you can't do it within minutes or even a couple hours, and that's ridiculous to think so unless you're tipped off in advance that the story is going to break.
It was done within minutes. As soon as it published online, within 5 minutes, the ads came up. The online ads came up behind it. So, look, they were tipped off. But if I understand what you're saying, Morgan, are you saying that it's unlikely that they actually got actual tax returns that somebody leaked from the Internal Revenue Service, that maybe they got some other sort of a document that might not be even accurate?
The question is, I don't know. But based on the way that the New York Times has reported over the last several years, and based on the Steele dossier being totally unverified, which that was a government source, I don't think today's media requires that they have a verified source. They just need somebody to tell them that, an anonymous tweet, an anonymous text to somebody saying, hey, we took a look at this and here's what we saw. Boom, they're off to the races with it because it's politically what they want to hear. And I think that first step of any probe is, was there any actual information, real information that was transferred? If there was, then you have to look at how can information that's supposed to be private be leaked out and what crimes were involved in that. But, somebody just makes up a rumor and the New York Times prints it. It may be poor journalism. It may be slanderous, but it's not a crime.
John Fredericks Radio Network with Congressman Morgan Griffith, Republican, Virginia 9th District. Congressman, let's get to Virginia. I was at the rally on Friday night in Newport News. I was one of the speakers, so that was kind of fun. We had 14,000 people there. Rally put together Tuesday afternoon. We got 14,000 out at the Newport News Airport hangar on a Friday night in Virginia. We expected 3,500 to 5,000. Is what was estimated. That was tripled. The enthusiasm for Trump in Virginia, no question about it, it's there. Can we win Virginia?
We can. It's not going to be easy, but we can. And everybody needs to get out and vote. And if for any reason you think you can't get to the polls on Election Day, or you're worried about coronavirus, or whatever reason it may be, what I recommend to people is go to your registrar and vote in person early.
Right.
That way you don't have to worry about, whether or not you're going to get any ballot, which happened in Charlottesville. They sent off for it and they got the package back but didn't have a ballot in it. Or whether you might get 2 ballots. It's happened at least one group in my district, or one person has reported that in my district, that they got 2 ballots. So you don't want to worry about any of that kind of chicanery or error happening. Then just go straight to your registrar's office and vote in person early if you think there's any way you won't get there. But we've got to make sure everybody gets out to vote one way or another. Vote legally. Do it honestly. But we've got to get every vote in. We can win Virginia. Not going to be easy, but it can be done.
So here's an interesting question. So my mom passed away a couple weeks ago. She passed. Before she passed, we got her an absentee ballot. And she filled it out and signed it, and I kind of put it on her desk because you have time to mail it in. And then she passed before I mailed it. So legally, I cannot mail that in because she passed. So, but
I checked with the lawyers on that. I don't know the answer to that. Since she filled it out in advance, she didn't deliver it. Anyway. I don't know the answer to that.
She passed, so you can't give a ballot. I mean, she's passed. So
yeah.
If I had mailed it out the day she signed it instead of having to sit on my desk, I would have been able to do that. But you gotta ask yourself. I'm just honest. I don't take any risks in this type of thing, so I'm not mailing it in. But you got to ask yourself. You get these ballots, and you got these households that got 2 of them. Like when we, filed for her thing, she was living with us, so her ballot came to the house. And but there was a lot of people that got 2 of them. So honest people are going to, not fill 2 out. They're going to throw the other one in the garbage. But you could easily give that to anybody and just have them fill it out and mail it in. Who would even know? And are the signatures going to be checked? When Trump talks about the opportunity for fraud, I mean, it's real. When you're getting double ballots in the mail, isn't that a cause for concern?
It's very concerning. And let me say this. You don't even have to go to fraud. There are a lot of people out there who are not political junkies, who don't pay attention to this stuff. They might even be voting for the first time. They get 2 ballots in the mail. They may legitimately think, well, I got 2 ballots. That must mean I get 2 votes. Now, you and I know that's ridiculous, but there's a lot of folks out there who may not feel that way or may not understand that. They think the government sent me 2 ballots, I get 2 votes. And then they send them in, and then the question is, does the vote count twice? Or the fact that they sent 2 of them in, does that mean neither one of them counts? These are the kinds of things. So you have both fraud and the fact that because the Democrats pushed so hard to get all of this put in quickly, the system is not ready for prime time. So you have some people who may commit fraud, but you also have just human error because the government isn't organized enough to get these ballots out one at a time to the right people, or to get them out at all. In Charlottesville, they had a bunch of people who didn't get a ballot at all. But it says they got a ballot. Now they're trying to straighten it out, and they think they figured out how it happened. But holy cow, we're close to just a little over a month before the election. And the registrars in the state of Virginia are trying to figure out who's getting a ballot and who's getting 2 ballots. And,
it's
unbelievable. It is a mess.
You're right. You're absolutely right. Barry in Weir's Cave says, John, once again, Representative Morgan Griffith hit the nail on the head. Big fan of yours, by the way. Let Biden put himself in a corner, as he always does. Barry in Weir's Cave. Congressman, great analysis of the debate, by the way. You want to be on Fox as one of their analysts. Excellent analysis by Morgan Griffith. Thank you, sir, for being with us, as always. I'll see you next week.
Thank you, sir.
John Fredericks Radio Network.